Hi, this is Joe Chambers. Welcome to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage. This week's guest is Garry Tallent. Garry is the founding member of the E Street Band with Bruce Springsteen. When we come back, Garry Tallent. So Garry, welcome to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you.
It's a nice place you got here.
Appreciate you showing up, man. I was not too much notice, but had some time open up and been planning on doing this. You know, like I've told other people, and this is not something that just happened overnight. I'd planned on doing this show back in the 90s, around when we probably met, when I had the guitar shop on West End, and wanted to just do a show about musicians back then, for musicians. And then, you know, it's once the museum got going, even though it's been 27 years or something like that.
Isn't that long?
Well, it was 97 was when I first talked to Chet Atkins about doing this, and he was all into it. But it just never came about. But the museum did. And so I thought this would be a good fit to go along with the museum now. So it kind of just different name than it would have been probably back then. So when did you move to Nashville? Why did you move to Nashville?
Well, I was in New Jersey and I had a studio up there, and I had done some records up there with well, I did a record with Steve Forbert. Streets of This Town was done in my studio in Nashville, and he was living in Nashville. Steve Earle was just getting started, and he was touting Nashville. He had moved up from Texas. And who else? Oh, Evan Johns, he was from Austin as well. And I don't know, I guess I just had a lot of friends. He had been in a band with, he was in the Good Humor Band. Anyway, a lot of those guys wound up out of Virginia moving to Nashville. Just suffice to say, I had a lot of friends in Nashville that were touting it, saying, man, you need to check this out. This is really great. And at the time, the New York studio scene was all kind of going synthesizers and, you know, not live dates. It was all computer-based, and it just seemed like Nashville was the last bastion of places where you could go and do a live session, and that appealed to me. And I came down, checked it out in '88, and next thing you know, February '89, I was here.
And this was during a lull with the E Street Band?
It was actually pre-lull. The last E Street Band tour finished in '88. I guess that was, we did the Tunnel of Love tour, and then we did that, it was a benefit tour with Sting and Peter Gabriel and all that. So that was all finished, and we were just we were on hiatus. We weren't quite let go yet, but I had planned to move here before that breakup.
So I'm going to jump back a little bit. So everybody wants to know, how did somebody get involved in music? What was the moment that you knew that you wanted to be in music?
Well, I always was in music from the time I was about 9, when I got my first guitar, I guess, and I got a Stella acoustic used. Strings were about that high off the neck, and they were rusty, and I didn't have a pick, and so I went to a music store there in town where I lived, and they kind of laughed at my guitar, but I wound up working in the music store, taking out trash and all that, and was there for 5 years, and over that time I worked in the music store. I wound up, by the time I was there, for a while. I was waiting on customers, working in the shop, and listening to the guitar lessons being taken. I wasn't taking them, but I heard, what was going on. So I just kind of always gravitated toward it. And then about the time I moved to New Jersey and got a little band going there, I guess I was about 15 or 16. We played at the NCO club at Fort Monmouth, and at the end of the night they gave me $15. And I guess that was the beginning where I said, oh, you can make a living doing this?
So when did you you played tuba, right?
I played tuba in high school band, yeah.
Booker T played tuba too.
Was he a
right?
tuba player?
Yeah, he was a tuba.
I didn't know that.
He actually played tuba on a couple of the Booker T and the MG's records.
I wasn't aware.
Yeah.
I need to go back and listen.
Yeah. But so when did you make the jump to bass?
I played bass off and on. I guess when I moved to New Jersey, I started a band just to do the talent show. I was just trying to meet people. It was my sophomore year of high school, and I didn't know anybody, and it was the beginning of the school year, and everybody in this little town in New Jersey, Neptune, New Jersey, had pretty much gone to grammar schools together. Everybody knew everybody else, and so just trying to meet people, I put a little band together to do the talent show. And by doing that, I met other musicians, and so that kind of began that in my sophomore year of high school. And I guess I switched to bass when our band came in second at a Battle of the Bands, and the band that came in first, I wanted to be in the band that came in first, and they needed a bass player. So I said, sure, I can play a bass. And I'd never played a bass before. I played the upright bass in the school dance band. I figured it's probably even easier, but I didn't own a bass. So they just decided that they wouldn't tell the bass player that he was kicked out. So for the first month of rehearsals, I was using the old bass player's gear. He didn't even know that he'd been kicked out of the band.
That was nice.
Yeah, well, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there.
Oh yeah, that was just the beginning of the music business.
Yeah, that was just the beginning.
So, but you worked in the was it the Silvertone factory or something?
Dan Electro was based in Neptune City, which was just down the street from where I lived. Yeah.
So did you actually build the Longhorn bass that you used in the band?
One piece at a time.
Like Johnny Cash.
Like Johnny Cash, yeah. Yeah, it was a 6-string bass neck and the Longhorn body. Well, actually, the first body I built was a double cutaway. It was a guitar body with a 6-string bass neck on it, and yeah, I just one piece at a time.
So you actually made the bass that you played in the band?
Yeah.
Wow, that's the one we've got on exhibit here.
Well, that's the Longhorn. That came later.
Came later. Yeah.
That came later. The other body, the guitar body, as I recall, had different harmonics that came out. I wound up stuffing it with newspaper, which helped. But then finally I got a Longhorn body, and it was fine.
All right, so now you're playing bass. You're gigging around town. How did the E Street Band, how did the whole Springsteen thing happen?
Well, it happened. Bruce was from Freehold, which is about 12 miles inland from Asbury Park. So I didn't know him. We went to high school at the same time, but different high schools, and we played in bands at the same time, but just never crossed paths. He played the Middletown, Rumson, Freehold area. I played basically Asbury Park, and furthest I ever went was, well, eventually I think we wound up in Seabright at one of the teen clubs. Anyway, it was just a local music scene, the Hullabaloo clubs, the teen clubs. We all played the same clubs. So we were really, I guess, in competitive bands.
And so how did you get together?
Well, that was the Upstage Club, which is kind of, everybody knows about the Upstage Club by now. I started going there, I guess when it first opened, it was just some friends that opened up a club for after hours. We would play until 3 o'clock in the morning in the bars, and then we'd want to just go somewhere to play something other than the top 40 tunes that we played in the bars. So that was kind of how that started. And so the Upstage Club became bigger, and eventually they opened up the upstairs. And then every guitar slinger in the whole state of New Jersey wanted to wind up there and show what they could do. And Bruce kind of showed up one night to show what he could do.
And how long before you started doing original music?
Well, right away.
Right away.
I took a severe cut and pay playing original music with Bruce, but actually I was still playing in bands, playing bars at the same time. We would rehearse during the week, and I would still be gigging with whatever I could do. I still played guitar, I still played drums, I still played keyboards in whatever gig I could do. So there was easily 6 months of rehearsal with Bruce before we ever played a gig.
So Bruce was writing original songs from the time y'all started?
Well, he was doing original songs with Steel Mill, and they became very popular in the local scene. So he had proven himself as a songwriter already.
So when did the actual E Street Band start playing around as Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band? What time was that?
Well, nobody seems to know for sure when it was called the E Street Band. We were the Bruce Springsteen Band from January of '71, but we didn't, like I say, we were rehearsing, going over songs, putting the band together. We added girl singers and horn players. That didn't necessarily work, too many people. But we tried. It wasn't until after really the first album was done that the configuration of the band became what basically was the E Street Band. But we still were called Bruce Springsteen or the Bruce Springsteen Band.
And when did you, when did the first record come out? And was it Columbia? Was that the first record label?
Greetings from Asbury Park, I think, '73.
When did you see your life change incredibly? You know, from basically being a local musician to being a part of a...
About 1985.
Really? That long?
The Born in the USA album was bigger than life. But up until that point, we were still struggling as financially, and it was... I
didn't realize that. I didn't. So y'all struggled a long
15
time.
years to be an overnight sensation.
I don't think people realize that. You know, they just because they don't realize who you are until you become famous, and they think it happens overnight.
Well, Born to Run was #1 record in '85, '75. Hit #1 in the Billboard charts.
Okay, so it was 75 then, not 85.
No, '85 before we actually made any money at it,
even
had
after
any notoriety.
Even after having a #1 record?
Yeah. Well, there was, after Born to Run, there was that, the lawsuit that lasted 3 years. We couldn't work, we couldn't do much of anything. And there again, I was working in whatever bands I could. I was doing a jazz trio with Tal Farlow at a local club. I was doing whatever I could do. But yeah, I was still a struggling musician after '75.
Wow. I didn't realize that. I thought it was kind of, full steam ahead once you have a big record like that.
Yeah, well, at least the band didn't break up after the big record. That's usually what happens.
Yeah. When did y'all get big in Europe? Was that right off the bat as well, or?
Well, the first tour we did was '75. That was our first trip to Europe, and no, that was a money loser. I mean, we did well, I mean, it established us, and we got a good reputation and good reviews from those shows. But there was only like 5. I think we played Stockholm, we played London, we played Hamburg, and a few others. It was limited. It wasn't a tour. It was just kind of opening the door and seeing if we were let in.
So you played in this auditorium above the museum here 78, right?
Yeah.
So what would have appeared to all of us in that time that you guys were like living the life, you were really struggling then?
Yeah. In 78, there was a band playing up the street from where I lived in Seabright, New Jersey, which was a tribute band to Bruce Springsteen. And they were pulling in, pretty good dough. And I was in the street, down the street, basically, I would have gone for unemployment, but that was frowned upon because we were afraid that maybe Rolling Stone would find out or something.
So the tribute band was making good bucks.
Oh, they were killing
off
it.
Of.
They kind of pissed me
That's
off. Yeah,
unbelievable.
I have to admit.
That is unbelievable. Okay, look, we're going to come back in just a minute, and so just stay where you are.
The Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum has been celebrating the men and women who make the music of our lives since 2006. The Musicians Hall of Fame is the one and only museum in the world that honors the talented musicians who played on the greatest recordings of all time.
It's a music city, huh? It's, where else are you going to get the cats, all the cats that are in this room?
The Grammy Museum Gallery at the Musicians Hall of Fame is an interactive facility that allows guests to explore the process of making a recording. Take drum lessons with Ringo Starr. Sing on stage with Ray Charles. Write a song with Desmond Child. Rap with Nelly. Or be Garth Brooks in our recording studio experience. Located in the heart of downtown Nashville, in the first floor of the historic Nashville Municipal Auditorium. Come see what you've heard at the Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum.
Hi, I'm Tyler Rudesheim, Director of Events at the Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum. Located within the historic Nashville Municipal Auditorium, the Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum is one of the most unique spaces in downtown Nashville, offering a versatile environment that caters to events of all sizes. Your guests will love this truly Nashville experience. We specialize in corporate dinners, music industry events, receptions, and more. Contact me today to book your next event.
Welcome back to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage with Garry Tallent, E Street Band. Musicians that are fans of you and the band, they always want to know, how did you get the sound that you got? How did you land on the instruments that you used? And so, for the gearheads out there, what was your gear at that time, and how has it changed briefly over the years?
Oh, well, I had one bass. I had the Dan Electro for the first album. That was the double cutaway. And second album, I probably got the Longhorn by then. The song Born to Run is on the Longhorn with round wound strings because you couldn't buy flat wounds anymore because of Chris Squire. You couldn't buy a set of flat wounds anymore. So I had to stick round wounds on the Dano. And then on Born to Run, I think that's probably mostly a Fender bass because, you bring a Dan Electro into a professional studio and they go, "Where's the Fender?" So they hand you a Fender and you play a Fender.
And then Born in the USA is the
Born in the
one
USA.
we have here, is that right?
The Music Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did you land on that? Did you just like them, or did you get an endorsement?
Because of all the grief I was getting by bringing the Dan Electro into the studio. I needed something more Fender-ish, but I couldn't play a Fender Precision. The necks were just too big and too bulky and too heavy. I bought the Music Man bass thinking that that's what I needed. And of course it weighed 16 pounds, and that's the last thing I needed. My back is still suffering from it.
So I wouldn't have thought that anybody would have cared. One thing that struck me when I went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was I saw this bass in there I was like, man, that's a ratty looking bass, man. It looks homemade. And so when I looked up at that time, they didn't actually have on the instruments what they wore. You had to look at the number and the letter and look it up on the sheet, so it was like C7. And so I'll go from C7. And this bass, I was like, I couldn't believe that I had made it somehow into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It said this bass was used to record the songs Tell Her No and She's Not There by the Zombies. And now I'm like, holy crap, that's the coolest bass I've ever seen. It went from this to that over, and so I would assume that, especially with the grunge bands, all that kind of thing kind of went out the window with, I don't know how many pictures I've seen of Glenn Campbell playing a Japanese imported 60s guitar on all those great sessions during the 60s.
Sounded great too, didn't it?
It did.
Well, it's in the hands of the player.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm back to the Dan Electro. It still sounds great. I still use it.
And it doesn't kill your shoulder.
Yeah. It's a whole different thing, yeah.
So, what's in the future for you and for the band? Are you guys going back on tour? Or?
Well, my immediate future is to release my second album, which is coming out soon. It's finished. We're working on the art. It's called More Like Me, and it's kind of my homage to the 60s, like garage, a lot of fuzz tones and a lot of Vox organ and songs that I've written, and kind of just trying to tell that story, and we'll see what comes of that. But that's what I plan on working on this year. The rest of the band is, Steven is doing his tour, Nils is doing his tour, Max is doing his, everybody's doing their thing, and I think that Bruce will probably release his solo album that he's been sitting on for years. That's just my guess, but these are all, we shall see.
And so there's no big tour for you guys lined up as of now? Mm-mm. So when we first moved over here from our original location over on
5th.
6th, yeah.
6th,
yeah. Mm-hmm. So one day I called you and you came over to check out the new digs and how it was going to be. And so it was in the afternoon. There wasn't anybody else in the whole auditorium but you and me. And so we go upstairs, and it was still new to me being in here. To have a 10,000 seat auditorium connected to the museum was kind of cool to me. And we go upstairs, and I'm like expecting, and I'm like, let's check this out, and you went, yeah, that's kind of quaint, and I'm like, quaint?
Quaint, is that what
What the
he
heck are you
said?
talking about quaint? And there's 10,000 seats. And you were like, Amy, I'm sorry. We usually just play about 80,000 seat arenas, throughout Europe,
Well, that sounds terrible.
And I'm like,
did I say that?
Yes, and it hurt my feelings.
I'm sorry. Sorry,
So-
Joe.
But it really kind of put things in perspective for me, because I'm like, whoa, this, you become friends with somebody and you don't realize the kind of things that you've accomplished and things that you've done, and I don't think that they could have pushed me out in front of 80,000 people without me fainting, on stage. And I do want to ask you that. What is the difference between playing in front of 200 people in a small club, or 10,000 people like here, or 80,000 people? How does that change your performance, if it does at all?
I think it's easier to play for 80,000 people, because it's just an event, and you're just part of that event. You get in a little club, and you got people right there in front of you, and you also realize that. I did a tour of my own first record, 200 seats. You know how hard it is to get 200 people out of their comfortable living rooms to go to a club?
Yes.
It's very difficult. So I definitely have an appreciation for the people who are there in a small thing, there to hear something that they don't know what to expect. And so that's harder. That's really more difficult, well, especially in a situation where you're the front man and not a side man. But I find it more difficult to play for a smaller room, to tell you the truth. It's just more, it's just more in your face, you know.
See, again, I would have thought that it would, you know, I guess just because of the numbers, I would have had stage fright, you know.
Oh, I have stage fright anyway.
You do, really?
Oh yeah, I should not be in the business that I'm in. I have tremendous stage. I've always had tremendous stage.
Do you
fright.
lose it once you walk out on stage?
No, I try to channel it. I try to change it from nerves of fear to nerves of excitement. That's the best way I can deal with it.
Steve Ferroni with the Heartbreakers, drummer.
Sure.
He'd made a comment about being out on tour with the Heartbreakers, and you get picked up by a limousine, you stay in the finest hotels. You're on the tour for a year, and then when the tour's over, it's like you're cooking your own breakfast, you're back at your apartment, you're having to drive or get a taxi. It's like being weaned. Did you have a similar experience?
Oh, definitely, definitely. Well, we call it being picked up in a limousine and sent home in a cab.
Yeah.
You know, that's the business. That's what it is. Yeah, for a while there, it took me a while to get used to not being able to call room service. You know, you'd have to actually leave your house to go get food. Yeah, there's
You get spoiled.
different life. I'm spoiled, I admit it. And when I go to do my own tours, it makes it a little difficult because I bring friends as the band, and you can't spoil them the way I'm used to being spoiled, but certainly you don't want to go back to flea bag hotels and stuff.
Yeah.
So it makes it difficult. You can't go back.
Thanks for taking time to do this. And
We can spend hours.
I know it, man. We have, and it's
When we have.
yeah, and I'm afraid I've left out a lot of things because we've had so many talks in the past that I can't remember what we talked about. But I always appreciate your friendship and coming by and hanging out at the guitar shops back in the day and supporting those too, man. I appreciate that. And always valued your friendship and respected your musicianship. So thanks a lot.
Well, I appreciate you doing what you've done. I think in the early days I might have said something like, "Joe, you're out of your mind. What, are you crazy?" But you've done it, and I'm really proud of you.
Well, I just it's the content, it's the people that are here. We just kind of built a home to put it in, So
With all the adversity too, it's remarkable.
we had, life. You never know what's going to happen, But it's been fun, and if we hadn't wanted to do it, we certainly wouldn't have done it. But and if I could go back and not do it, I would still go back and do it. That's how hard it is.
There you go. Well, that's.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks, and y'all come back and see us next week and on Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage. Thanks for joining us.